Chapter 1. The Sting and the Glitch. The military barracks mess hall was a study in functional sterility. Cold, hard ferrocrete floors, strip lighting that hummed with a low, aggressive buzz, and long, unforgiving metal tables made it less a place of rest, and more an environment designed to grind the human spirit into dust. The air, thick with the stale smell of synthetic rations and recycled sweat, carried the constant, low roar of men and women trying to forget their duties. Hacker Byte stood at the counter, a ghost among the soldiers, his lithe frame swallowed by the mass of reinforced armor and heavy-duty uniforms. He was a man of the code, not the caliber, his augmented eyes constantly scanning the data streams humming through the walls, seeking the quiet pulse of a vulnerable network. Tonight's mission, sanctioned by the Syndicate Collective, was simple: plant a deep core virus in the base's logistical server. The virus wouldn't kill, only paralyze, freezing shipments of weaponry for a week, long enough for a Syndicate rival to be eliminated. His target, however, was not the server, but the man standing 3 tables away, casually tossing a nutrient cube between his hands. The Underworld Scout, a specialist from the Shadow Network, was notorious for his counter-espionage skills and uncanny knack for sniffing out digital intrusions. Tonight, the Scout was to be the unwitting vector for the virus. Byte had a portable interface ready, capable of dumping the malicious payload via a close-range neural link, a handshake gone digital. The Scout, clad in flexible stealth weave fatigues, moved through the mess hall with the coiled tension of a predator. He was here for the same prize as Byte, but for a different master. The Scout's job was to extract a high-value data slate from the very server Byte intended to infect. He needed to avoid all contact, all exposure, and then disappear back into the anonymity of the Shadow Network. Byte waited. He watched as the Scout made his way toward the exit, his path taking him directly past Byte's position. Now, the hacker thought running the final protocol. The moment was perfect. But the Scout's support, a wiry Shadow Network data slicer known as Warp Engineer, was already in position. The engineer, moving with the preemptive grace of a specialist, stepped from behind a coolant pipe, an unassuming data jack extended. The Warp Engineer didn't make contact with Byte, but rather with a floor conduit directly beneath the hacker's feet. Syndicate noise. The engineer's voice hissed silently over an encrypted channel to the Scout. He's setting up a proximity dump, diverting his access now. Go. A focused electromagnetic pulse surged up from the conduit. It wasn't violent, but Byte's personalized high-frequency comms array, a secondary network only he used, cracked with static. The momentary glitch was enough to crash the proximity upload sequence. Byte's chance was gone. The Scout, recognizing the successful distraction, didn't hesitate. He took a wide, evasive step, his hand brushing the arm of a Syndicate bodyguard, a hulking Syndicate boss who was currently trying to coerce a mess hall worker. The boss, already in a foul mood and seeing an enemy faction member, roared, spinning around with a violent, instantaneous fury. Chapter 2. The Eruption. Shadow Dog, you think this is your territory? The Syndicate boss bellowed, his voice carrying over the din of the mess hall. His challenge was a magnet for trouble, drawing the eyes of dozens of off-duty soldiers and mercenaries. The military environment's fragile peace shattered instantly. Byte knew this was his second chance, his brute force backup plan. He couldn't infect the Scout digitally, but he could use the ensuing chaos to force physical contact and manually administer the viral payload, a sleek nano-injector hidden beneath his cuff. He plunged into the crowd, aiming to intercept the Scout before the fight escalated beyond control. The Scout, however, reacted with the cool precision of a man who preferred silence but excelled in violence. He moved past the roaring Syndicate boss with a low, practiced shoulder dip, sidestepping the boss's clumsy grab. The Scout support, the Warp Engineer, now engaged directly to secure his leader's path. Seeing the Syndicate boss as the primary threat, the engineer used a short-range, acoustic disruptor tuned to the low frequencies of the ferrocrete floor. The floor began to subtly vibrate, rattling the plates of the boss's subdermal armor and sending a crippling wave of nausea through the mercenary. The boss staggered, giving the Scout the perfect opening. The Scout stopped, turned, and planted a heavy, low kick that swept the legs out from under the massive Syndicate boss. The boss crashed to the ground, a spectacular noise that sent metal trays flying and instantly turned the brewing tension into a full-scale bar fight eruption. Soldiers, sensing a break from routine, instantly took sides based on old grudges, faction loyalties, or sheer boredom. Byte tried to navigate the sudden storm. But a man with low physical strength is simply not built for a brawl. He was jostled, shoved, and elbowed, his path to the scout blocked by a chaotic wall of swinging fists and flying chairs. He slipped between two brawlers, emerging on the far side of the table, gasping for breath. The nano-injector still clutched in his sweaty palm. The scout saw his chance. He had neutralized the largest physical threat and created a perfect smokescreen of disorder. With a burst of speed, he jetted for the exit, disappearing into a maintenance corridor leading to the logistical server. He had won the physical engagement. The mess hall was his battlefield, and he had used the chaos to secure his mission. Chapter 3. The Backdoor and the Trap. The Underworld Scout reached the server room, his heart pounding with the rush of the successful gambit. He had beaten the Syndicate's best and was now on the precipice of delivering a massive prize to the Shadow Network. He bypassed the electronic lock with a clean practice slice of his data spiker and slipped into the cool, dark chamber. The logistical server, a colossal, humming structure of glass and light, sat in the center of the room. The scout moved directly to the console, ready to begin the data extraction. His fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing the core protocols. "Success is a lonely thing, Scout," a smooth, synthesized voice echoed in the room. The scout froze, dropping his spiker. The voice wasn't from the comm unit. It was emanating from the server itself. He spun around, his hand flying to the heavy combat knife on his belt. The warp engineer had been right to secure his passage, but neither of them had anticipated a deeper game. Hacker Byte, blood trickling from a cut above his eye, stumbled into the room through the now open door. He was exhausted, defeated in the physical realm, but his eyes, augmented and glowing with determination, were fixed on the scout. "You think I came here with just one plan?" Byte rasped, leaning against the doorframe for support. The proximity dump was a distraction. "I wanted you to see me." "What did you do?" the scout demanded, his mind racing. "When your engineer hit my comms, it only crashed the primary upload sequence," Byte explained, a chilling, thin smile gracing his lips. "But my system was already in a high alert state when I got thrown around out there. One of those accidental shoves. I was accidentally slammed into a wall that houses an auxiliary ventilation unit." Byte gestured to a small, almost invisible data jack port on his wrist. "That system? It has a direct, hardwired link to this server's environmental controls. And I didn't send a virus, Scout. I sent a lure." The scout finally looked at the server console. His extraction process, which should have been a clean siphon of data, was showing an unexpected flag. /file_trap. The extraction hadn't begun. The server had uploaded a tiny, compressed, corrupted file to his data spiker, thinking it was a log file. "You won the fight," Byte continued, his voice regaining its analytical calm. "You were stronger. You were faster. You got the prize. But that prize? It's a digital tether. It leads directly to the core network of the Shadow Network." The voice of the server spoke again, now sounding triumphant. "The Shadow Network is hereby logged. All active connections now tagged for deep core monitoring. Thank you for your assistance, Scout." The Underworld Scout, whose fierce loyalty to the Shadow Network was everything, stared at the console in dawning horror. He hadn't just secured a data slate for his faction. He had exposed the coordinates and access logs of every active Shadow Network agent currently connected to the galactic web, delivering them on a silver platter to the Syndicate Collective. His moment of physical triumph in the mess hall was the precise moment Byte had secured the real victory. Chapter 4. Final Consequences. The scout let out a guttural cry of frustration, his immense strength now useless against the digital betrayal. He lunged at Byte, not to fight, but to take his opponent down with him. The Syndicate hacker was an inconvenience, but the catastrophic failure to the Shadow Network was unforgivable. Byte, anticipating the move, simply took a sidestep, letting the scout's momentum carry him forward. The scout, blinded by rage, slammed his shoulder into the server cabinet. The impact caused a catastrophic system cascade, not because of Byte's programming, but because the Scout's brute force finally succeeded in doing what no software could: physical damage. The server shrieked, its internal coolant system ruptured, and the emergency lockdown protocols, designed to contain a viral outbreak, engaged. Plasma containment fields slammed down around the room, sealing the Scout and Byte inside a rapidly heating chamber. The logistical server, now running an auto-destruct sequence, began to pump its main power output directly into the containment field. Byte, his intellect now his only chance, flew to the console, attempting to disengage the field. The Scout, his strength still formidable, tried to tear open the physical doors. They worked against each other, yet were united by the terrifying realization that they were now both utterly trapped by the consequences of their conflict. The Syndicate Collective got the data they wanted, but the entire logistical server, the base's control center, was about to be turned into a pile of slag. The ensuing investigation would be a disaster for both the Syndicate and the Shadow Network, exposing their operations to the entire military authority. The plasma field surged, turning the air a blinding, painful white. Hacker Byte had achieved his objective to compromise the Scout and the Shadow Network, but in his triumph, he had created an undeniable catastrophe for his own faction. The Syndicate had won the battle, but lost the war. The final surge of energy enveloped the room, silencing chaos.